Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. And if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all, without reproach, and it will be given to him. Hi, I'm Rod Granger. I've been attending the CCLF now for 21 years. Come from a little bit of a Christian background. My parents were both attended churches when they were young and come from Christian backgrounds. I was raised on a ranch down at Princeton for till I was 14 years old. There was always way out in the middle of nowhere. Went to town once every 2 weeks for groceries. We actually attended a church on a fairly regular basis for about 2 or 3 years there, where I got a very juvenile concept of what Christianity was. Had the idea that when you became a Christian, when you went to heaven, you actually became an angel with wings and, played a harp and sat on a cloud, which I wasn't musically inclined, and I wasn't really a singer, so that really, as I got older, didn't really interest me too much, although I did believe in God. I had a firm belief in God throughout my growing up years. At 18 or so years of age, when I left home, because I put people up on a pedestal, and I would look at different people and say, oh man, they got it made. One fellow I went to school with quit in grade 9 type of thing, and he had a welding shop. By the time I was out of high school, he had his own welding shop, and I worked for him for a year. He had a business that he was selling and buying into a bigger business, and this was in the early 70s, and he was getting $1.5 million for it. And I figured, oh, wow, that's if I could kind of be like that, that's kind of what I thought. And anyways, I quit working for him after a year and went on the oil rigs, because I had some friends who were working as the drillers on oil rigs, which is a fairly high up position, and they were making triple the money I was making as a welder. So I figured, oh, well, I'll try that. So I went and did that, and I was single, and it was an exciting life of sorts, and I got to the point where I got up to being a driller after a couple of years, but there was no real, there was some pleasure, I guess, or happiness in attaining that goal, but once I actually got there, it was like I was still a bit empty. I actually had a really good boss on the crew at the time that I really respected, and he probably kept me out of a lot of trouble, because usually the days between shifts, when you work a 2-week shift and had a week off, it was, drinking, partying, mostly alcohol, maybe a little bit of drugs, chasing girls with nothing but selfish motives type of thing, self-fulfilling my own desires. But in many cases, I'd get out for 1 or 2 days, my boss would say, we're short-handed, come back to work, and I could never say no. So it actually kept me probably out of a lot of trouble, because I ended up doing a lot of overtime shifts, either daily or extra days, that actually kept me out of a lot more trouble than I could have got into. We moved to, my brother and I decided to quit our jobs when I was in my early 20s and moved to BC. He wanted to get into a big ranch, work on a big working ranch in BC. When we ended up here in 100 Mile, we had a cousin that was living in the area, and that was a Christian too, not attending church faithfully, but he was a good influence on us anyways. He introduced us to a rancher in the area, Chris Horn, who my brother and I ended up working for about 6 months, I guess, in which case my brother went back to take over the ranch in Alberta. I stayed here I wanted to get on in the logging industry, and so I did that. And we were on a small crew of about 6 people working, doing juvenile spacing. 6 of us would go out every morning on a pickup, and actually the boss was actually kind of a dope smoking hippie. He was supposed to smoke it right on the job and in the truck and so on. And there was 5 other employees that rode in the pickup along with me, and I was sitting in the back seat, but there was another reformed dope smoking hippie that had got Jesus sitting in the front seat, and he kept witnessing to this boss of mine. Boss didn't seem to be making much headway with the boss, but I was actually I was internalizing it. I believed in God, I believed in the Bible, had a Bible. In fact, at the time I was actually living in a trailer out in the middle of the bush, so I had a lot of time on my hands, and my mom and dad had given me a Bible in a suitcase as a graduating present for grade 12. And I still had the Bible, and I was actually putting in, I hate to say it, more hours reading the Bible before I was a Christian than I even do today, just because I had lots of time on my hands and I was doing a lot of reading. After working for 3 or 4 months on this EBAP crew, I finally asked, by the way, the person that was the dope smoking hippie that was doing the witnessing was Spence Henderson. So I asked him, well, maybe could I come to church with you? And it was being held at the school in town at that time, with Lyle Johnson being the pastor. So I was attending there with Spence, and after 2 or 3 weeks of going with him, I was actually, after the service, standing in the washroom at the urinal, and this complete stranger standing beside me, and he kind of says, "Hey, you're new here." He says, "Yeah," and I said, "Yeah," and he says, "Are you a Christian?" And I kind of like, "No," and I'm trying to go to the bathroom, and that's really hard when there's that kind of pressure put on you. Anyways, and he says, "Well, who brought you?" And I told him who brought me. He says, "Well, what's wrong with you becoming a Christian right now? Let's go sit in the steps of the church, and we'll and you can say a prayer of salvation." And I kind of reluctantly agreed, you might say, because I was still having a lot of conflict between my perception of what a Christian is, which was kind of this angel on a cloud or safe, secure idea that life is boring once you become a Christian, over my idea of what my life should be, which should be adventuresome and exciting, and so anyways, we went out, we sat on the church, he found Spence, we sat on the steps. I said the prayer of salvation, and I meant it, although I somewhat resented Pat Melanson probably for a year or two after that, because he put that pressure on me to sit down and accept the Lord as my Savior when I didn't really feel I was totally ready, or didn't want to be all in. I was just kind of sitting on the fence, and he kicked me onto the right side of it, which I've since forgiven him for. Anyways, actually, it was probably within a month and a half or 2 months after I became a Christian that I actually met my future wife, who was working at a welding shop here in town, that I was where I went working part-time type of thing. And anyways, I don't think she'd have went out with me prior to me becoming a Christian, after she heard some of the stories from my past, which, weren't the greatest. Would have scared her away. Anyways, that's my story. I'm thankful for it. It's been a journey, but I'm certainly glad that I bypassed or got out of that destructive lifestyle earlier on in my life that certainly wouldn't have led me anywhere good. Yeah, really, that's just my story right there.